Good evening, my name is Chuck Iovan. I'll be presiding over this evening's meeting of the City of Malden Planning Board, December 9th, 2020. In accordance with Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and Governor Baker's March 23rd, 2020 revised guidance on order by the governor prohibiting assemblage of more than 10 people, this meeting will be conducted virtually and provide for remote public attendance to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted, and all effort will be made to permit remote public attendance in this virtual meeting via technological means in the manner specified below, and if available, via public broadcast of the meeting by Malden Access Cable Television on public access television channel. Public access will also be provided by posting draft minutes and or a transcript, recording, or record of the meeting on the City of Malden's website at www.cityofmalden.org as soon as practicable after the meeting. First thing we're going to do is roll call, and we'll start with Tawadage.
Tawadage Gabrasilase, Planning Board.
Patrick Fitzgerald, Planning Board.
Diane Shuha, Planning Board.
Ken Antonucci, Planning Board.
Chuck Iovan, Planning Board.
Michelle Romero, City Planner.
Eric McCush, Planning Board. Pat Hayes, Planning Board.
Eric Henry, Planning Board.
Henry Susi, Planning Board.
Thank you all. Remind everyone that if you could speak up so that the sound bar picks up your voice and your comments, and also announce yourself before you start speaking. The first item on the agenda is 54 Easton Avenue. Ken, if you could read the notice, please.
Malden Planning Board will virtually and remotely hold a public hearing at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, December 9th, 2020, on the petition of 54 Easton Ave, Malden LLC by its manager, Bread of Life, Inc., to renew, amend, and extend the special permit granted in case number 18-11 under sections 12.12.010A and 12.28.010E of Chapter 12, revised ordinances of 2020 as amended, formerly known as sections 300.3.2.5 and 700.1.3.2 of Chapter 12, revised ordinances of 1991 as amended for the City of Malden. It allows the extension, reconstruction, and use of a pre-existing non-conforming property in the Highway Business Zoning District for multifamily residential dwelling use as 14 studio dwelling units and general office with accessory food pantry and meals program, kitchen and dining room, namely to revise plans and extend the expiration date of the special permit at the property known as and number 54 Eastern Ave, Malden, Mass., and also known by City Assessor's Parcel ID number 076270007.
Thank you, Ken. Is the petitioner present? Go ahead, Michelle.
Yes, I am Gabriella Snyder-Stelmack, Executive Director of Bread of Life, here to represent the project along with Laura Spark, President of Metro North Housing Corp., and the architect for our project, Randy Johnson, for Resolution Architects.
Thank you. If you could present your petition, because as I understand it, the previously approved petition expired. So we're not just extending an existing permit. We're basically hearing a new one. Some of it's changed a little bit. And we'll be approving that with a new deadline. So if you could,
Yes, thank you very much.
that would be great.
We're happy to present our petition to you. And thank you, Chairman Iovan and members of the board for taking the time, and members of the public. We have been before you several times before. We've been working hard on our design on every aspect. as Michelle Romero has outlined in her review of our project and advisement on it. And so unless there are questions about more specifics about what we were doing, the concept and the overall project that we're presenting to you is essentially the same. Bread of Life programs and offices will be on the first and second floor, and the third floor is the 14 units of affordable housing that will be owned and operated by Metro North Housing Corp. But there are some changes, and I would like to turn it over to our architect, Randy Johnson, to run through those things for you, if I may.
Very good.
Good evening, everyone. With the permission of the chair, could I do a screen save to show the drawings?
Okay. First thing I'd like you to do is name and address for the record, and then if you want to share on the screen, be my guest.
Sure. Randy Johnson, senior partner at Resolution Architects. We're based in Natick, Massachusetts.
Okay.
So there we go, right? Is it working?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll try to make things as big as possible and just go through the basics of where we're starting from and where we ended up with the design proposal. The first thing you're looking at is the existing site plan, which shows the very narrow access driveway that Bread of Life lives with right now between 54 Eastern Ave and the building to the east of it. Also note that the existing footprint of the building is very close to the western property line. And in fact, it actually encroaches onto the abutting property on the western property line. So one of the first major decisions made on the project was the decision to demolish the entire existing building. And this was done for a number of reasons. One, the condition of the building. Two, the multi-levels in the building. Three, where the building sits on the site, making that very narrow access drive, pretty much unsafe for vehicle access and pedestrians on the sidewalk. So the decision was made to demolish the entire building and essentially start from scratch with new construction. And this decision also was ratified by the Malden Historic Commission too. We recently had a set of hearings with the Historic Commission that reviewed the historic significance of the building. And it was at one time the headquarters of Volpe Construction, Governor John Volpe. So there was sentiment that this was a historic building, and we worked through those issues and came up with a agreement that demolition was possible based on some conditions. And one of the conditions actually was to, on the site, make a memorial to Governor Volpe. And we'll show some of that as part of the proposal tonight. So you're looking at now the existing site plan, and I apologize that the orientation of the new drawings has changed a little bit. Right now, Eastern Ave is at the bottom of the page. The other site plans show Eastern Ave at the right side of the page. So that's a little change in orientation between the first drawing and this drawing. So as Gabby said, the proposed building is 3 stories with Bread of Life function on the first 2 stories and a residential component of 14 units of studio apartments on the 3rd floor. And 3 floors actually is the maximum allowed in this zoning district. So that was the limit. We had to live within the 3 floors. There's also a elevator penthouse, which really doesn't count as a floor, that goes above the main building. One of the challenges of this project is the two programs being combined together in a single building, the residential component and the Bread of Life component. So that was, one of the sort of difficult things to work out in the design, is how these two programs mesh together. And they also mesh together at the level of the site. The main approach for the public to the site is off the community path. And I'm using my cursor to show the main entrance to the Bread of Life functions. And then there's a secondary entrance to the residential program at the other side of the building. The Eastern Ave side is largely used or primarily used for service of the Bread of Life function, with the deliveries of food and the food being exported off the site. That's pretty much the business end of the building. One very positive thing we are able to do with this version of the design, and there have been about 4 versions of the design, is that by positioning the building where it is located now, we have the ability to make a pedestrian connection from Eastern Ave to the community path along the western property line. And I think this is a really important attribute of the project, both for the internal program of people getting to the building from Eastern Ave to the public entrances, but also as a public benefit for a connection to the community path. So the general public is able to use this walkway. The walkway itself was also incorporated into the memorial for Governor Volpe, in which we named actually the connection, the Volpe Path. And along, I'll show it on the next slide here, along the path, well, at the Eastern Ave entrance to the path, there's a monument that is dedicated to the memory of Volpe. Then along the path are what we call stations that deal with broad categories of his career. And then finally, part of the proposal worked out with the Historic Commission was the reuse of some of the brick from the building, and also reuse of the current entrance of the building on a side of the new building, which would contain additional information about the career and legacy of John Volpe. I do have some parts of the application that we did to the Historic Commission. The monument on Eastern Ave would have some pictorial representation of Governor Volpe. And then along the path are these stations, which, as I said, represent sort of broad categories of his life. One thing we are going to do is work with the Volpe family in working out the details and the wording of signage and various aspects of the design. And also the Historic Commission will be involved in the sort of final version that we do. One concern of the Historic Commission was, well, how's this going to look from Eastern Ave? This is the loading dock. What's it going to look like? So we pointed out to them that actually there's a very beneficial relationship of the adjacent buildings to the proposed building by making somewhat of a courtyard type space that both would contain the Volpe Memorial and the space in front of the building. We did a quick sketch of that to show roughly what the building would look like from Eastern Ave. And there really is no loading dock because the deliveries are at grade level. So there's the memorial signage representing, service only, public entrance on the opposite side of the building, some wayfinding type signage, a screen that screens some of the backdoor activities of the delivery function, namely, staging areas, pallets, sort of trash control, and a canopy over the loading dock. What I mentioned is the courtyard type feeling is the walls of the existing buildings, which you currently don't really see because the buildings are so close together, do form this sort of space, courtyard type space in front of the building. And there would be landscaping also along the sidewalk of Eastern Ave. So a little bit more about the site, getting back to that basic site plan drawing, there's space for 6 parking spots, which I actually believe is an increase of 1 spot from the previous application, and room for truck deliveries from Eastern Ave. And on the community path side, we have a covered area, which is part entrance and part ability to do some outdoor dining in relationship to the food service or meals program of the Bread of Life. So I think probably move into the space planning of the building itself. But maybe before we.
Sure, Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Quick question for you.
Sure.
I'm looking at the schematic you have here, and will the delivery trucks have to back in from Easton Avenue?
They should have the ability to turn around on the site. I know the initial application had a template for showing a 22-foot truck doing that turnaround. And we're working with a civil engineer to reproduce that same ability to drive in, turn around, so the loading side of the truck, namely, just jump the thing. The loading side of the truck is facing the delivery door, and then the truck can drive straight out to Eastern Ave. But that's something that we will verify with Hancock Engineering when they do that sort of diagram of how the truck can turn around on the site. I know it's not a complete answer, but it's a work in progress right now.
I was just thinking that if there are cars parked in the 6 parking spots, I don't see a big truck being able to negotiate it, but
No, I
do that.
yeah, I agree. To accomplish that, deliveries would have to happen when those parking spots or the significant parking spots that would that are necessary would be free from cars. Because you're right. Right now, it's just it's just a basic aisle, and to turn around, you need the space of those parking spots. I do want to mention that there is no accessible parking spot shown, and that is largely because the size of the parking lot does not require it by code, and also we provide no parking spots for the residential component. If we did, then we would have to supply an accessible spot because there's an accessible apartment as part of the 14 studios. I did want to mention just briefly the setbacks. The eastern property line is about 3 feet, and the western property line is about 6 feet. And this will be sort of more carefully defined as we work further on the project. But that's one of the, like I said before, that's one of the main differences, is that the existing building now has a setback on the western line of 0. And our new position allows more space around the building and the ability to make this connection between Eastern Ave and the community path. So any other questions about the site itself then?
No, I don't have any. I did notice that there were 4 2 cubic yard dumpsters that weren't there before.
Yes. I probably should talk about the trash program in general. A lot of this is contingent on the type of containers that the trash hauling company that Bread of Life engages handles. What we showed on this are 2 cubic yard containers on wheels that are about 3 feet wide, 6 feet deep, 3 feet tall. So they're very compact and can be moved around. The idea is that one of these, and again, this is one version of the trash program. The idea is that one of these is a recycling container that is used by both the residential and the Bread of Life functions. The other 3 are dedicated trash containers. And additionally, part of the program, we envision having a cardboard compactor and baler inside the building that would further reduce the volume of the amount of recycled cardboard. And these are able to reduce cardboard volume by 1 to 5 or ratios like that very effectively reduce the amount of sort of boxes and the volume of cardboard packaging, and that would be recycled from the site. But I'm glad you asked about those containers, because the idea is shared between residential and Bread of Life, mobile, able to be easily picked up, and having a recycling component. I know Bread of Life has looked into compost, handling, compostable trash, and has not yet found it to be, cost feasible. Gabby, you may have something more to say about that too, but I think that's what we ended up with. That is that it sounds like a very good idea with the food program, but it was tough to pull off in a feasible manner. And I mentioned before on the elevation sketch, there is a screen that screens the trash component of the site from view from Eastern Ave. Okay, just a brief look, again, still talking about the site. Just a quick look at sort of the area of components. Total site is about 13,500 square feet. The building footprint is approximately half of that. So you end up with a FAR of, well, I'll get to that later. And about just under 4,000 square feet is parking area. About 1,500 is the pedestrian connection between Eastern Ave and the trail. And then there's the about 200 square foot outdoor dining area along the trail. And additionally, in terms of open space, there's about 190 square foot roof deck at the 3rd floor, which serves the residential program. So that's sort of an overview of the open space. We didn't bother counting this, sort of narrow spaces along the side and back of the building, because they really don't have any programmed open space function. So getting to, I did want to show you this. This is the part of the building, the entrance that we are proposing to reuse as part of the Volpe Memorial, and that would be located on the Volpe Path side of the building, on this blank wall here, and in the middle of the salvaged entrance trim would be information about Volpe, to be determined what that actual text is. The building itself is about 35 feet tall, so it's a pretty small structure, just the 3 floors. And as I mentioned, there is this elevator penthouse element that rises up above the building, coinciding with the residential entrance. And, and here's the commercial entrance area, losing my voice, area along the community trail. Excuse me. So looking at the space planning, again, this is oriented the same way that the site plan was, with Eastern Ave at the lower part of the site, or the lower part of the page, and the rail community trail up at the top here. The first floor is exclusively Bread of Life program, with elements including a large multi-purpose room that is used for the meals program, and the food distribution area, or for the pantry function, which is modeled after more of a superette type format, as opposed to a counter service format. Here, the clients come in and select the food they want to get, as opposed to just being given a package of food. So it really does resemble a small market, as opposed to sort of just getting a bag of food at a counter. Support services, support spaces include restrooms, the commercial kitchen, which we're working on the design of that now, and support areas for the kitchen, such as walk-in freezers, coolers, and storage areas. As I said, the Bread of Life program is on 2 floors. We realized that in order for this site to be viable, it was important to have a larger area for the Bread of Life, given their important role in the community in terms of food distribution, the ability to store food. We realized that we had to increase the square footage of their program. So we put on the 2nd floor a sort of warehouse storage area for the Bread of Life, which is connected excuse me, to the ground floor by essentially it's a pallet lift type lift, not a freight elevator, but just something to lift pallets up between the 2 floors. Also on the 2nd floor is a suite of offices for the Bread of Life, and also a conference room that would be shared between the residential program and the Bread of Life program. For the residential program, going back to the 1st floor, there's the residential entrance and an elevator that serves excuse me, both the Bread of Life and the residential function. And there are 2 egress stairs, one at this end and the other at the other end. The 3rd floor, excuse me, is the 14 units of housing, each one about 340 square feet. So they're very compact units, studio apartments. Here's some sample space planning of the units. So it's essentially a small food prep area, a bathroom, and a living space. There is some variation between the units, but essentially they all have the same compact program. Support spaces on the residential floor include a laundry area, and as we mentioned, the outdoor roof deck area, which is off the end of the corridor here. Roof level has the potential for photovoltaic solar system. So that's one thing we're looking into as a possible energy conservation green building component. I know one of the conditions is not having rooftop equipment visible, which we have to take a closer look at that, because one of the proposed elements is a emergency generator, which would be located on the roof. because there really isn't that much space on the site. So that's something that we will have to study as to how we can obscure some of the rooftop equipment the best way possible. And one way is more of a parapet at the roof level that would help obscure some of the equipment. I mean, here diagrammatically, we're showing condensing units that are part of the HVAC system for the residential units. And I think that's, given my voice is completely giving out, that's pretty much of the architectural presentation. So I'm going to get a glass of water and be available for questions. So I'll be right back. Thank you.
I do have a couple of questions about the plans when Mr. Johnson gets back. While we're looking at this, I was wondering what the petitioners feel about the storage space being provided. Will that eliminate the need to store all those tarps and cardboard boxes and all the other things that you're storing on site right now?
Outside.
Yes, outside, right.
This is Gabriella. I'm not exactly sure I understand the question. Are you talking about the recycled boxes that are outside?
I know that when I look at pictures and going by there, there are a number of carts that seem to be stored outside, a number of trash barrels, cones, pallets, and a number of boxes. Will the new storage in the provided in the building in the trash collection plan eliminate having to store all these items outside? Because I believe the last petition, one of the requirements was no outside storage.
Yes, that's our intention. Our intention is that in the new facility, we would not be storing the pallets. That's been really a byproduct of some of the changes that have happened at the Greater Boston Food Bank, especially with the COVID, the increase, and with the overload of the food bank and the services that they're providing, and they stopped taking pallets. So in the future, we would have capacity to put inside our building the pallets, as Randy mentioned. The pallet, we're going to have pallet jacks, and we're going to have that pallet lift up into the warehouse. We have a lot more staging area inside the new building, in the warehouse, and where the lift comes up. So that will be positioning for our grocery delivery program. When drivers come into, we're delivering, door to door to senior citizens and COVID isolating families. There'll be that area, as you can see on the screen right now. So that lower left sort of open area, that's the Eastern, that area. And then the trash will be much more contained with having the compacting of the cardboard. It really is the cardboard boxes that have nothing in them that takes up so much space. So that we hope to alleviate.
And what's the plan for all these carts and shelving and the different things it appears that they're used to unload, I would think unload trucks or transfer the food and other items into the facility?
Our plan at this point would be to continue that. That's used for, offloading the truck. However, we'll be able to, it'll be much more efficient getting the food into the building and right onto that lift. So there's going to be an area where we'll be unloading the trucks and then going right into this lift area. So I would imagine there'd be some two-wheelers and carts that would be used in unloading the trucks as we use them now, and then they'd be able to be stored inside.
Yeah, I mean, that's a key part for me is the fact that overnight and after you're finished your operation, so they're not left in the yard, they are stored inside.
Oh, I see. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, if you're back and have a moment, I'd like to ask you two questions about the design of the, on page A3. Can you explain to me what it seems to be there's a design blowout in the middle of the page. One of them appears to be just a room with a bathroom. One of them appears to have a sink and stove, along with a bed and a bathroom.
Right. There are two different versions. One had the small kitchen function along the entrance hall. The other has the kitchen function in this area of the plan. And then in that one, we didn't show the cooktop or the sink. I think this is the better version, and we're going to take a part of this closet for the refrigerator. So the kitchen function moves to this part of the plan here. The trade-off is that
Am I looking at two proposals of what might be the layout of the 14 units? Or do half of them have the layout on the left and half the layout on the right? Or
no,
I'm trying to understand how that fits together.
well, about 9 of the units are of this configuration, and we're leaning to the one on the left as being the sort of direction we're heading in. I mean, they're both both similar. The main difference is where the food preparation function ends up. And we felt it was better to get it off the entrance hall here and get it more into its own dedicated space. But as I said, this is typical of 9 of the 14 units. There are about 4 other ones that are different shaped rectangles, and the other one would be the accessible unit, which would have a completely different design. So there are really 3 unit types. This type is the one that's repeated the most of 9 of those.
So that's the one on the left.
Yes, yep, this one.
And that won't include a cooktop or a sink.
No, it does, and that ends up on this counter here.
It's just not shown?
Yeah, just not shown. And then further modification is the refrigerator would be part of this corner of this closet.
Okay. Okay, it just wasn't making the connection there.
Yeah.
And the second part on the patio, is that, so that patio that was being presented, is that gonna have a cover over it, or is it gonna be just a deck? Or what is that? Can you describe that more, please?
Well, it shows up on the elevation here, and this version has a roof over it. So it's protected. That's the current design approach, is that it's a little bit of a void in the entire building that is an outdoor space. And
I'm looking at the bottom portion of that.
Yep.
So, because it kind of looks to me like it's almost like a luxury box at a ballpark that isn't a deck extending out. It's more of an opening or a viewing area.
Right, it it does not extend out from the building. It's not like a balcony. It's more of a portion of the building that is open to the outside.
Okay, so it is flush with the outside, okay?
Yep.
I wasn't sure if it was flush or if it was sticking out on the other page. It kind of looked like it could be outside.
I mean, this version that we did for the Historic Commission had more of a a pergola type feeling, more open. The current version has a roof over the entire roof deck. So it's fairly enclosed, but it's the outdoors though.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Last question that I had, I don't know if others have questions. Last question I had, if this gets approved this evening, what's the timeline on completing this work? Seems to be more extensive than the previous permits. I'm just curious what the timeline is on completing it. Are you all set with funding, and so it's just a matter of getting the permit, you can start construction, or are you still trying to line up funding? And what's the timeline we're looking at?
I'll address that. Yes, as some of you may recall, the housing side of the portion is completely funded for the 4.9 million. And the Metro North Housing Corp, mainly through government grants and some funds from the Malden Community Preservation Committee. And Bread of Life has been funded mainly through philanthropic gifts, but also with assistance from a CDBG grant through Malden and the Malden Redevelopment Authority. So we are actually less than $400,000 away from our $4.3 million goal. So we are actually looking right now for transitional space during construction. And our current goal is to demolish the building, to have the closing and be able to demolish in the spring, looking toward April 2021. I did notice, I think you're referencing Michelle's last point, 18, in her recommendation that the extension of the permit till 2022. I did notice that. And thank you for that. I think because maybe we have had hiccups in the past with different things happening, but our intention is really we're pushing to move forward as rapidly as we can with this. Did that answer your question?
And your name and address for the record?
This is
Yeah,
Gabrielle,
So,
sure, Gabriella Snyder Stelmack,
okay.
Executive Director of Bread of Life, 54 Easton, and I live at 38 Wheeler Street in Malden, Mass.
Thank you. No, so that sounds good that's on a faster track. Does anyone else have any questions for the petitioners? Michelle, do you have any questions?
Yes, I had a few questions. You mentioned the possible solar panel system that might go, would that be going on the roof?
Yes,
Okay, so that's considered a utility, and I'm presuming we wouldn't cover the solar panels, otherwise they would work. So we would want to, when we get to that point, we'll recommend an exception for the screening of the solar panels. Now, the emergency generator you mentioned, can that not be screened, or is it, I mean, it doesn't have to be completely enclosed, but could it be visually screened just with like a decorative, parapet wall, or it doesn't need to be all out in the open, does it?
no, and we could actually potentially incorporate that in the area of the elevator penthouse. So, you know, that the elevator isn't as big as the penthouse we're showing. We may be able to have other mechanical, electrical equipment within that area of the building. So,
Okay,
and the other elements are a lot smaller. We're not looking at having a big rooftop chiller or large ERV unit on the roof. The other units would be smaller compressor units, which if they're close to the center of the roof, they would not be that visible from Eastern Ave or the community trail. So I think the smaller stuff we probably don't have to worry about. It's just something that's tall, like the generator, and those things are like 7, 8 feet tall. That would be a greater concern.
okay, but you think that could go possibly in this elevator?
Yeah, in that general penthouse area, which already is bigger than the elevator, we maybe be able to put the generator in that enclosure.
Yeah, I mean, the site is graded, so you're sloping up to Eastern Ave and then the residential on the other side of Eastern Ave. That's what the visual screening would be for.
Yep.
As it goes up Hillside Ave.
Yep.
Back to this roof deck. The building commissioner and I have reviewed this, and he is considering this to be a balcony. But I understand you're calling it a roof deck because is it over the floor of the second, is it on the roof of the second floor? Is that?
It is, yeah. It's the, I don't know if you remember the previous application, but that had a very large roof deck that was dedicated to raised planters, which worked out well. It was oriented to the south, a lot of positive things about it, but it disappeared with the sort of reshuffling of the spaces. It's no longer part of the program, but we did want to have a component of the residential floor to have some ability to have a direct connection with the outside. So that's the roof deck, and it is directly over the floor below. It doesn't, it doesn't extend from the building. It's almost like a room in the building that happens to be completely outdoors. It's enclosed by the same siding that the rest of the building has. And as we said before, it doesn't project from the building at all.
So there will be walls on both sides and there'll be a roof above? It'll just,
Yes,
there'll be one wall missing is essentially what it is.
yes. And one of the reasons for, say, the wall on the eastern side is that that would create privacy for the adjacent units also. It separates the, visually separates the roof deck from looking at the windows of the adjacent units. So it's a very discrete outdoor space connecting with the laundry area. So it has some social program elements, and there'll be a small sitting area right inside from the roof deck. So it's pretty much the only sort of communal social space on the residential level.
But when you're standing in it, you can see out to Eastern Ave. There's a wall to your left and there's a wall to your right.
Yes,
And there's a roof above you.
yes.
Okay, so it's kind of, okay. It's not going to be enclosed or heated, so it's, is that correct?
Right, it's not heated at all. It's completely open. Fresh air is the point. And it only looks at the Eastern Ave view.
Okay. Thank you. The courtyard seating area in the back that faces the Bite to the Sea trail, is that that's open seasonal, or it's year round, that's just in like an open patio, is that correct?
Yes. Yep. And I didn't mention there, right adjacent to that is a sort of an outdoor storage area where seasonally, you know, things could be brought indoors, table storage. But, you know, I mean, this year you'd probably want to leave the tables out year round, just to, again, fresh air and a place to be outside and undercover. But it's not a very big space. And I think the idea here is that it ties in directly with the meals program. And it gives the opportunity maybe for some of the clients to do some sort of catering type operation that could actually serve the bike community trail also. So the program isn't really nailed down, but it has the potential of being more of a public amenity for users of the trail.
Okay, and that is showing the dotted line on the plan, so there's an overhang, so that
Yep.
is partially covered.
Yes, it is covered. Yep.
Okay, that section is covered, and then the outside versus bike rack, that's uncovered, right? The dotted line is the roof line, is that right?
Yeah, the bike rack is uncovered.
Okay. In terms of the outside storage, the chairman had mentioned there seems to be a lot of outdoor storage. There was yesterday when I was there. Some of it in the back of the building looked like trash. I don't know if there's a small incinerator there, there's a gray metal unit in the back of the building. Looked like a gray box. It's in some of the pictures. And there was clearly trash back there, but along the side of the building and near the loading area, there were the carts and boxes and things like that. So you do think that the storage inside, there is a recommended condition as was previously recommended and put in other special permits that no outside storage allowed. So that's not the same as the trash, but any of these other items would be considered outside storage. So do you think it would just be, you would have it overnight, or do you really think everything is going to be moved in? And I just don't want to, recommend a condition that you're either not going to be able to meet, or no, it's not part of your plan to meet. But
I'll just address, Michelle, this is Gabriella. So our intention on the new facility is, let's talk about the bike path end of the building, what you saw there. So right now, our trash totes are there. We have JRM. So those would be at the other side of the building behind the screen, as we discussed. There's a lot of recycling boxes. And again, we would be having the consolidation of the recycling and having those in a bin. So the whole way that the trash is handled is going to be changed and also consolidated because of the compactor. The other thing that's back there that you saw, I believe, that looks like a gray box is not an incinerator. That's actually the old disused oil tank. Actually, there were two of them, and they're simply covered and contained. So that's part of what's being demolished. In terms of carts and all two-wheelers and carts and shelving that we use when we are setting up the pantry, again, when we close, even now, we bring those things inside. We bring them into our current garage area. So our intention for security of the items, if nothing else, is to bring all those things inside. We are doing that. We continue to do that. The pallets, we are trying to get rid of at the moment. We have no intention of storing pallets on our site. if anyone has a wood burning stove and wants them, please email me. So I think that's the main elements there. We had discussed having an outside table for our consumers for when they are exchanging products. But I think what we've decided to do is we just have that out there when people are actually actively, coming to the food pantry. And I don't even think that with the new superette style, we're even going to need that, because the point is for people then only to be able to have client choice and only take what they need. So again, that's going to be one less thing that's going to happen outside. We pretty much were able to eliminate that. And what we call an exchange table, or a leave what you don't want, take what you want. We don't believe that we will need that in the new superette style service to the community.
Okay, great, thank you. And is the cardboard compactor a definite? You're definitely gonna have that? The
We
cardboard.
started discussing it. A lot of it is about space, but my understanding from what as Randy shared is that we will have space for that inside the building.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And excuse me, Gabriella, you're saying superette, right?
Yeah, that's our nickname for the pantry distribution area, because there's a traffic flow pattern. We actually visited a recently renovated pantry a couple years ago called the Open Door in Gloucester, and really looked at their design. So the idea is things would be displayed as if you were in a little market, like a small grocery market, with displays for your produce, for your dairy, your refrigerated foods, and then for the non-perishables. So the displays that were perishable, refrigerated, and frozen foods would be around the perimeter of that room. It's where you see the red arrows going in and out. And the non-perishables would tend to be in the shelves in the center there. And then people would, quote unquote, check out, not with money, but an inventory system.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure I was picking up the word correctly. The first few times it was used, I wasn't sure I was picking it up.
Yes.
Thank you. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have one other question. A couple times during the presentation, Randy mentioned or referenced this was the current design, or this was, in progress, or, made reference to the fact that there may be modification. And as you know, one of the conditions the board would put on a special permit if it's granted is that the entire development shall be as per plans, which are then incorporated in by reference, except as modified by the conditions. Could you possibly, avoid having to have you come back through the process, itemize some of the potential changes so that the board could try to address those in the special permit? Because what will happen is, there'll be some room for the building commissioner to, use his discretion to make an interpretation that it's a minor modification, the kitchen and the units moved to the other side. But as these, for example, or minor modifications, but as they start to accumulate, they no longer are considered minor and they'd be considered substantive changes, potentially. Then you would need to come back to present revised plans. So it would be helpful if you could list as many areas of this plan that you think could possibly change so that the board can consider it. And if they're comfortable, we can try to add that in as a condition so that you'll have some flexibility to make some changes without needing to come back to amend the permit.
Michelle, are you recommending that we issue this separately then?
No, I'm asking if you could itemize some of I heard you make reference to a couple areas, like one of the setbacks, you said, well, right now it's 4. You mentioned, at least I thought you mentioned in your presentation, a couple areas that seemed like there could still be some change. Is there anything, that you know of right now that you think could potentially change, that you would want the board to try to address? So that you wouldn't have to come back, otherwise you'll be held, substantively to these plans unless any exceptions are made, so.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can talk about, or did I misunderstand what you were saying?
For example, the commercial kitchen area is being designed, and some of the support spaces have already changed since we issued these drawings. There is no freight elevator. This drawing shows a freight elevator. Technically, it's not a freight elevator now. It's a vertical reciprocating conveyance device that doesn't take passengers. The program itself won't change significantly. The size of the footprint won't change significantly. And the overall area of the building won't change significantly, because we've kind of maxed out the trade-off between open space, the footprint, the parking area. So the general shape of the building is fairly set. I see most of the changes being on the level of space planning. We've retained a code consultant that's reviewed sort of the gross configuration of the building and doesn't see any problems where that would cause a change. So I guess what I'm getting to is there will be a lot of minor changes within the same program, the same shape of the building, the same volume of the building. Maybe well, beyond that, that's the best I can do, I think, Michelle. And thanks for trying to give us the flexibility that would allow, minor changes to be not triggering additional review.
All set?
Yeah, thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Ken Antonucci and then Patrick Fitzgerald.
This is Ken Antonucci. So what would you consider these plans now? Is this closer to like 70% or 90% design package? Or when do you think it'd be closer to getting an actual final design?
Yeah, right now, this is still schematic design. So, in terms of percentage wise, that's probably, it's a lot of the overall effort, but in terms of, construction drawings, we're at, 5% construction drawings right now. We are still working out some of the space planning issues. So we can't really jump into construction drawings until those are better determined. So to answer your question, we're at a pretty low percentage of design right now.
I was thinking not so much for the construction drawing, but just for the schematic drawing.
Oh, for the schematic, I'd say in terms of schematics, we're 80%. We we recently changed the entire configuration of the building. A couple of months ago, we were probably at a higher percent, but with the change of, we had 2 levels of residential at one time. And the residential space planning really hasn't caught up to where we were 3 months ago. So that's one area that needs a lot of sort of space planning work.
So how much longer do you think you need to get closer to the final schematic design, I guess? This is what I was getting at.
Yeah, okay. I think if we set a target of end of the year, that would be feasible.
Like 3 weeks? You mean that?
If that soon.
This year?
Yeah, this is early January then.
And then I know, Gabriella, you mentioned earlier your kind of milestone schedule. You said April 2021, that the start of, is that, what date was that? Was that your occupancy? That's demolition? I mean, 21, right?
Excuse me, yeah, April of 2021 would be demolition.
But I'm getting my years mixed up. So start demo and then idea.
11, 12 months of construction. Mhm.
How much longer after the demo would you consider starting construction? I mean, if you're just looking to get the schematic drawings done by sometime in January, that's pretty tight schedule to get all the drawings done in a few months and approved.
Well, our goal has always been to, close on all of our loans, all our financing, and then to immediately begin demolition and construction right then. That's still with our development consultant, Alice Kraft. That's her normal way of operating. So yes, we're driving hard to complete the schematic and then move to construction documents at the same time as we bring in the rest of our funds. So yeah, it is tight. That's our goal. And so, it might be a month or so beyond that, but that's what we're pushing toward.
And does any of that funding or funding that you already secured based on the special permit in hand? Is there any risk for you on that end with either the existing or future funding that you're looking for?
Well, we absolutely need the special permit in order to move forward with the project. I'm not sure exactly what that absolutely is. Our funding is with, for Metro North Housing is, DHCD, or Federal Home Loan Bank, North Suburban Home Consortium funds. So yeah, absolutely.
I just have one other question as far as the building itself goes. The overhang on the community path side, the second floor, that's gonna be what, it isn't called out on the drawings, but it's gonna be what, 2.5 feet away from the property line for the community path? It looks like there's either 4'9" or 4'10" between the rear of the building and the community path. And then the overhang looks like it's
Yep.
upward.
Yeah, the overhang is 2 feet, so you'd end up with about 2 feet 10.
All right, thank you.
Okay. It's Cheryl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see on the current plans that there's currently 15 parking spots on the site. I would just want to know, what's the demand for those 15 parking spots now on a daily basis or throughout the week? And how is that expected to change with the new construction?
I could address the current parking. So we have 3 vehicles, which would continue, that are parked at various times when they're not doing deliveries and pickups. And then some volunteers or staff occasionally park there, but most of the parking lot for most of the time is actually not used. That's why the pallets are able to be stored there. Most of our parking is off-site and will continue to be. So we anticipate the slots that we're going to have from Eastern Ave, for example, a crew coming in to provide the meal could park there and unload. And there might be, 3 vehicles in the evening doing that with the volunteers. Otherwise, it will, basically be for our vehicles and visitors as they come to drop off a donation, that kind of thing. People coming and leaving. Otherwise, we will continue with our off-site parking, and of course, none of the residents will have cars. So at the moment, really, our parking lot has been very underutilized, which is good because we're doing our program out there because of the COVID. We're doing distribution.
And we do not, we don't anticipate that the people that we serve will have cars. They are largely, they're extremely low income, homeless before becoming our residents. It's pretty unusual for them to have cars. In the other properties we do have, we have one property, Casanak House, nobody has a car. Another Washington Street, we have one person who has a car, one person who has a motorcycle. In that case, those people have been our residents for close to a decade, so that they've been able to stabilize enough to own one. But that is actually quite unusual, even to have that level of vehicle ownership.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, miss, can you give your name and address for the record, please?
Oh, I apologize. My name is Laura Spark, and I'm the president of the board of Metro North Housing Corporation. And my address is 20 Bardwell Street, apartment 1 in Jamaica Plain.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions? Eric Henry.
Thank you, Chair. Eric Henry, just had a question about this historic undertaking here with Bread of Life with regard to the pedestrian traffic and the path. What is the current state with regard to pedestrians, and does the residents and the public to transit back and forth between the the path and Easton Ave?
Right now, there's no formal pathway. The space between 54 Eastern Ave and the Western building, which is the Chinese Christian Church, is an alley that's blocked off at both ends. People do walk through our site when the gates are open. There's a gate at the bike path and a gate at Eastern Ave, and if those are open, the public walks through. So it's sort of casual use at this moment.
And you're proposing to change this to a public access from the bike path to Easton Ave?
Correct, Volpe Way on that, yes.
And it will still be subjected to what hours of operation for the public?
Maybe Randy can address that. I mean, that's a public easement that we have an agreement that this is going to be a public easement in perpetuity. So I don't believe we had anticipated gates on it or anything of that matter. Randy, do you have thoughts?
Well, I agree that there was never any intent to at any time preclude public access on that pathway.
That's the change. Just a point of clarification, thanks, and I thank Henry about that. I was actually getting at the point, I tried to get into the site one day, my kids were volunteering, and they were early, I guess, hey, they were early, but the gates were locked. So we're actually proposing a change in the time that the gates will be open and accessible to the public.
Yeah, again, they, into our site, we're not going to have that large chain link fence at the Eastern Ave. There's going to be a pedestrian friendly level of type of railing there that'd be much more attractive, like what's on the other side of the bike path. So, but the public would be going, if they just needed to go through the site, they would go through Volpe Way from either direction, and there would be no gate that would impede them from doing that. Getting into our site, I believe we had still talked about a gate to get into the Bread of Life site if we weren't open. Is that?
Yes, it does. That's fine. Thank you. And maybe I think to Chuck's original point and to Ken's point, I think is about the drawings themselves. Many of the aspects of this project are historic. And if we undertook an approval of this tonight, that would be kind of historic as well, because we're, from our architectural firms, and I'm sure that you have a solid resolution. Our drawings are a little bit more precise, if you would say, at this level of approval. And to that, I will yield.
Does anyone have any other questions? I had one pop up where this is significantly different in tearing down the existing building, where the previous permits were utilizing a good portion of the previous building. Have you guys thought through how you're going to administer your program during construction? Will it be from this site, or have you already secured an alternate site for the year that you're going to be in construction?
It will not be at this site. So for those of you familiar with our operations, for many years we have used rented sites for our meal program, currently using the First Baptist Church of Malden. So that we will continue during construction. And we are starting the construction project with demolition of the building. So we will not be there at all during construction. We're already starting to get rid of things and pack things. And we're looking tomorrow at a site of transitional space to lease. And we looked at one last week. So yes, we are already we're working with Kevin Duffy in the city of Malden, identify commercial spaces for office and for warehouse and for distribution, and then leaving our meal program where it is during construction.
Thank you. And does anyone else have questions? Okay, if no one has questions, is there anything else you'd like to add to your presentation? Anything to add? Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
At this point, I'd like to entertain anyone that would like to speak in favor of this petition. Anyone to speak in favor?
We have one person, Councilor Barbara Murphy, raising her hand to speak.
Okay, we talked about that one. Okay.
I'm sorry, now it's Peg Crow raising her hand. Hold on one minute.
Thank you.
Councilor Crowe has raised her hand. So,
Okay, let's speak with Councilor Crowe.
Good evening. This opportunity to speak to you again about this project. And I am in full support, as I have been right from the beginning. I do know this has been a very long road and it's taken lots of twists and turns. And although I do hear the concerns of the board, that we're not to the 100% of the schematic drawings, I do feel like every iteration of this project has really heightened sort of the best and highest use of the space to really get to maximize the bread of life portions and the residential portion. It has been a long time coming. I hope that they get over the line with the $400,000 shortly, so we can move this forward. I did actually have a question, if you don't mind, Chairman.
Go ahead.
So when I know that in the presentation there is 6 parking spots and no one ever wants to eliminate parking, and if there's going to be a screen, does it help if they stick to the 5 parking spots and that 6th one is where the trash program is to allow for the trucks to turn around? I am concerned, we got to figure out a way to be able to turn around as many trucks and not back down and back out of Easton Ave. But I was just thinking that might be a spot if they're moving things around.
Councilor, are you asking us or?
Well,
Because I think you're gonna fit 4 2 cubic yard dumpsters into 1 parking spot.
yeah, just in my thought process, we're adding a spot. We went to the original plan with the 5 spots, to allow for more turnage. But really, I am 100% in favor of this project. I am happy to see it over the finish line, and I hope that the board sees it the same way.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
next we have Councilor Craig Spatafora.
Councilor Spatafora,
Everybody hear me?
we can.
Hopefully you can't see me. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the board. Again, I would like to I would like to echo Councilor Crow's previous statements. It has been a long road. This is, I think, the 2nd or 3rd time I've spoken in favor of this project. I did read the review from the city planner and agree with supporting this petition being granted under the same merits that was proposed in the document, along with any other amendments this board would recommend tonight. I think the Bread of Life certainly has been a fixture and a fabric of this community and has always done truly God's work. And I think as it's more evident now, given unfortunately this pandemic, the need for an institution like the Bread of Life to continue to be in Malden, but also have the proper facility, both in terms of upgrading technology and energy, but certainly the space accommodations for their growing needs, both in Malden and the surrounding community. So I do speak in favor of that and look forward to seeing this building finally erected on this property. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor.
did have. Nobody else is raising their hand, so I don't know.
Okay, is there
Anybody
anyone
would
else
like
that
to
wants to speak in favor? Please raise your hand on the Zoom technology.
Counselor Crowe is raising her hand again, so I'm not sure if she wants to speak again.
Not really speak again, but actually Councilor Murphy just texted me that she is trying to speak, so I'm not sure, what happened. So she did raise her hand, but
Yeah, it was raised, then it was down, so we'll,
Yeah, why don't you access for Councilor Murphy?
okay, Counselor Murphy?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I've tried raising and lowering. I know it was up there and it was gone. I wasn't quite sure what was happening, so thank you. Thank you, Councilor Crowe, for passing that message along. I too want to speak in favor of this project. I am a 100% supporter of under one roof. This has been a long journey for Bread of Life. They have, with everything, put their heart and soul and food into not only, feeding our community and taking care of our community, but trying to come up with a vision and a road forward to, increase their ability to bring to our community and our surrounding communities the much needed food and support that they provide and guidance as to how to bring people through some very trying times. I have to say, Gabriella, I was absolutely thrilled tonight to hear that you're so close to the final, stretch of the 400,000. When this project started, it almost seemed insurmountable. So I want to, thank you and your staff and everyone involved for the perseverance and all the fundraising you did, to bring this home. I mean, you really have not asked the city for anything. I know you've applied for a few grants that were grants you should apply for. And, I hope that we as a city do everything we can to allow you to move forward with this wonderful initiative. It's kind of like City Hall merging with JAG. To be able to create a new vision in the city of how the city's going to operate, to actually take your campaign and incorporate, housing with it, I think is a great stride forward. And it's probably, something that people will look forward to in other cities to maybe incorporate into their plans. So I just want to say thank you for all your hard work. Thank you for everything you're doing. And I hope that we can, move this project forward. And Ms. Romero, I want to thank you also for bringing up, the option tonight is, is there anything that you can say that will, prevent us from having to come back here again, because we have been here many times. So I look forward to a positive outcome this evening, and I look forward to the ribbon cutting on the new facility at some point in the very near future. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Murphy.
You just want to,
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor?
there's a person that is initials BW that has the hand raised. You'll have to give your name and address for the record.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ben Wan. I'm at 187 Bainbridge Street, Ward 5, and I would love to voice support of this project. Bread of Life is a great symbol, an institution for the community. Two, I guess, comments that I see on the plans, if I can take the time to voice them. One is idea of wayfinding and orientation from Eastern Ave, just making sure that there's some kind of, visitors who know sort of where they're headed. And the second is a question of just the programs that are on the first floor, the soubrette and the dining area. It would be great for some just visibility and transparency of the activity, so knowing from the bike path, and if there's some way that you can add some vitality and life to the ground floor present to the building. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I don't see anybody else raising their hand. There's a lot of people in attendance, but I don't see anybody else. So I do have some letters to
Yep.
read.
So why don't you read those, Michelle, before we close those in favor? Thank you.
So the first is a letter dated December 9th, 2020. It reads, Dear Chairman Iovan and Planning Board members, I enthusiastically write in support of the petition to renew, amend, and extend the previously granted special permit, allowing for several structural changes and alterations at 54 Eastern Avenue. As you know, this property is presently occupied by the Bread of Life, which operates as offices and food pantry at the location. Founded in 1980, Bread of Life has been providing 1 million meals per year through food pantries, meals programs, homeless family outreach, and teen center programs. The plan and special permit include the construction of a new and larger facility to enable it to serve more people in need. In addition, Bread of Life is partnering with Metro North Housing Corp., a nonprofit housing organization, to build 14 units of permanent affordable housing in the new facility for low-income homeless individuals and veterans. The proposal is to reissue a special permit and approve a revised plan, amending the conditions as to balconies and trash storage. Additionally, an extension of the expiration date is needed due to delays in the project's financing and the lengthy federal and state funding process. The importance of Bread of Life in our community cannot be overstated. They have earned a reputation as one of the leading food pantry and hot meal providers in the area. The challenges experienced during the current health crisis have only reaffirmed the importance of their work and the tremendous need for this project. A modernized facility will allow Bread of Life to continue in providing critical resources while fulfilling their core mission of feeding the body and nurturing the soul. Again, I respectfully request that the board look favorably on this petition. Thank you for your consideration, and please contact me if you need further information. Sincerely signed, Gary Christensen, Mayor, City of Malden. We also have an email that reads, Dear Honorable Planning Members and City Planner Romero. This email is in regards to the scheduled meeting this evening on the petition of 54 Eastern Avenue to renew, amend, and extend the special permit. I am in full support of Bread of Life and Metro North Housing Corp. and would support their efforts of an amendment continuation. Under One Roof project is proof that they have identified our needs in Malden and are actively moving towards a solution. Bread of Life, without a doubt, must be offered this courtesy. I respectfully ask you to support this tonight. Thank you. Signed, Debbie Di Maria, Councilor at Large. We also have, and that was sent via email dated December 9th, 2020. We also have a letter dated December 9th, 2020. It reads, Dear Planning Board members, I am writing in support of the modifications to and the extension of the special permit for 54 Eastern Avenue. The Bread of Life has actively used this building as its main food bank for many years. Having visited, volunteered, and dropped off donations of the building, I know personally that the building is a confusing ramshackle of rooms and stairs that somehow Bread of Life has made work. A new building, which includes a warehouse, large dining room, offices, and residence, is an important step in supporting this mission of this organization that is so vital to so many Maldonians. Thank you for consideration. Signed, Stephen P. Winslow, Councilor at Large. Those are the 3 letters in support.
Okay, and no one else raising their hand?
Nobody else.
Okay, seeing and hearing none, declare that part of the hearing closed. Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition to this petition? Those in opposition?
There's nobody raising
No
their
one
hand.
raising their hand? Do you have anything to read?
I do not.
Last call for anyone in opposition. Seeing and hearing none, declare that part of the hearing closed. Michelle, can you take us through your staff report, please, and recommendation?
So we did hear about the proposal. The proposed use is multifamily residential dwelling up to 3 stories, the 14 studio dwelling units. Would be the occupancy, general offices with accessory food pantry and meals program. That includes a kitchen and dining room. Most recent special permit granted in case 18-11 expired on June 30th, 2020. The proposal seeks an extension of this expiration date. The city ordinance provides that special permit, all rights authorized by special permit lapse within 1 year from date of granting if substantial construction and use is not commenced. They are also seeking approval of revised plans. We've noted here 2 changes in the revised proposal that would also require revision of other conditions of previously granted special permits. One has to do with balconies. There is a condition that says any and all balconies are prohibited. There is a common balcony for the residential units proposed on the third floor at the front of the building, which is Eastern Avenue. We've heard the petitioner call this a roof deck, and also it's labeled a patio on the plans. The building commissioner, Nelson Miller, has confirmed again that he will consider this a balcony, the space. So we'll want to make sure that gets addressed. In terms of trash storage and waste disposal, there are 4 dumpsters proposed to be located at the front of the building near the eastern property line. They are proposed to be screened. Previous condition reads, no permanent dumpster will be permitted on site after completion of construction. The permanent building must have a trash compactor. Storage totes used with trash compactor are permitted. So that condition we would need to modify if you are moving forward with this revised proposal. I've outlined the plans that were presented and filed with this petition. I won't read them. This planning report and recommendation is hereby submitted into the record. It will become part of your decision and record. There is a set of plans. There's also a memorandum dated August 7th, 2020 from Alice Craft Associates and Randy Johnson Resolution Architects that describes the revised proposal and plans. I've given you the special permit history, which I won't read into the record. The earliest or the original special permit was granted in 2013. In terms of zoning, the property is located in the highway business zoning district. The multifamily residential dwelling up to 3 stories is allowed by special permit. The general office's use is allowed by right in this district. Change of use of a pre-existing non-conforming property may be allowed by special permit only for use permitted in the zoning district. Both those uses are permitted. Direct abutters to the east are a motor vehicle repair shop and a building construction contractor's yard. To the west, a religious facility. To the north, the abandoned railroad right-of-way, a portion of which is the public multimodal recreational trail, Bike to the Sea Path, Northern Strand Community Trail. The other portion is the public parking lot managed by the Malden Redevelopment Authority. To the south, on the other side of Eastern Avenue, are a coffee shop, restaurant with drive-through. Surrounding land uses are institutional, business, industrial, and residential. The existing building does not conform to current dimensional controls. It's considered pre-existing non-conforming. Extension and reconstruction may be allowed by special permit. The revised proposal eliminates the existing front side yard setback violation. It reduces one side yard setback violation. It increases the rear and other side yard setback violations. It does create new violations of building coverage, density, and open space. All of these were previously approved by special permit or similarly previously approved by special permit. There would have been nominal differences in the nonconformities presented in this revised proposal. The proposal does require a total of 63 off-street parking spaces under applicable zoning. That's 49 spaces for the general offices, uses of the first and second floor, 14 spaces for the multifamily dwelling, 1 space per studio unit is required. The revised proposal provides 6 spaces on site, 1 loading space located at the front of the building, in site with access to the Eastern Avenue and a 2-way curb cut. This revised proposal, like previously approved proposals, addresses existing site access and egress safety issues by eliminating the unsafe conditions of the existing driveway. The revised proposal does provide a similar parking layout as the previously approved proposals. The parking spaces are configured head-on site. The parking is now located along the southeastern property line. In terms of dumpsters, the proposed dumpsters do not conform to the siting requirements. They are located within 20 feet of a property line. They're approximately 6 feet from the eastern property line. In terms of traffic impact, the originally approved proposal and special permit granted, for the originally proposed proposal and special permit granted, the board granted a waiver of the traffic impact study filing requirements, conditionally subject to resolution of issues regarding truck access egress and site distance for exiting vehicles. I referenced the city peer review report dated July 25th, 2012. The 2 issues that needed to be resolved. One was to address safety issues of vehicles and pedestrians entering and exiting the site. The site distance must be maximized by using low landscaping abutting sidewalks and safety signage and pavement markings for vehicles. pedestrian crossings at the site drive to be installed, including a stop sign, pedestrian crossing sign, and caution vehicles exiting sign. And the second is to address access egress issues for all vehicles, pedestrians, and truck deliveries. The loading space must be designated with pavement markings. The site plan be provided that includes an auto turn template to show that all vehicles, including delivery trucks, can turn around to exit the site head on. Given that we previously did have one of those plans with the auto turn template, the trucks did have to move into the parking spaces under that last proposal in order to maneuver around. Given that the parking layout has changed, turning movements and access egress should be shown on a revised site plan to make sure that's going to be possible. Other applicable requirements, the demolition and alteration delay ordinance is applicable to this project. Petitioner did obtain a determination from the Historical Commission. You have a copy of that determination. It's dated October 8th, 2020. The commission determined the building is preferably preserved. However, finding there's no reasonable likelihood that either the owner or some other person or group is willing to purchase, preserve, rehabilitate, or restore the building. The intent and purpose of that ordinance was served even with the issuance of a demolition permit. The commission agreed to allow demolition to proceed without delay and prior to the expiration of the 12-month delay period, subject to the owner's compliance with the following requirements. One, the following historical elements of the existing building will be incorporated and or reused on the exterior of the new building and project: salvaged masonry, salvaged entryway, excluding pediment, salvaged granite foundation, as per plans, design proposal dated September 14, 2020, and elevation schematics dated October 7, 2020, prepared by Resolution Architects, Natick, Mass. Attached. You have a copy of that determination in the plans that were approved. The second condition was that they establish Volpe Way with public access as per plans, design proposal, same date. And three, an agreement to allow the commission to review the text information for the proposed monument, stations, and plaques to commemorate the life of Governor John Volpe. Four, to allow the commission's consultant to photograph the interior prior to demolition. Other applicable requirements have to do with public health. The proposal must comply with city ordinances and Board of Health regulations regarding site grading, to not allow pooling of stagnant water, debris, waste storage and collection, and extermination during site development, and must apply for and obtain a food service permit in accordance with the state food and sanitary code. And see correspondence dated December 8, 2020 from the Board of Health, Department of Public Health. You all have a copy of that. I won't read that into the record. It's referenced and incorporated in by reference into this report. Findings required to grant a special permit. To grant a special permit, you must find that any creation or increase in violations of dimensional controls, parking requirements will not be more detrimental to the neighborhood, that the residential use is in the interest of the common good, and that the extension, reconstruction, and change of use of pre-existing non-conforming property are not more detrimental to the neighborhood. Provided that you make those required findings, you want the recommendation.
Yes.
The recommendation is to grant a new special permit subject to the following conditions. Now, I have made modifications from the conditions of the prior special permit are in emphasis. As we move along, I'll make some additional recommendations based on information we've heard at this hearing. So the first is strike the word entire. So the development shall be as per plans. And I just have written this. Okay. So the development shall be as per plans regarding footprint and setbacks, location of uses in building. So that means the residential is on the third floor and the offices and food pantry on first and second. So location of uses in the building. Site plan. And facade, which are incorporated herein by reference and except as modified by these conditions. We'll add also layout of individual floor plans may change. So not the uses on the floors, but the interior layout. I believe that should cover everything that we heard, but give the board enough certainty with what you're approving.
Thank you.
Okay. 2, the residential dwelling unit shall be used exclusively as studio apartments, each occupied by only one adult tenant, managed by and with on-site supported living program services to be provided by Metro North Housing Corp. Or a similar service provider. 3, the food pantry and meals programs must be accessory to the general office's use of the property. The general offices shall be used exclusively by Bread of Life or a single similar entity. 4, antennas on the rooftop or any part of the building's exterior are prohibited except for emergency city antennas. 5, all utilities, HVAC, and associated equipment on the rooftop shall be screened visually except solar panels. I think that's the type of utility, so.
No, that's fine.
6, any and all balconies and roof decks are prohibited. I'm going to say roof deck because they're calling it a roof deck, except for one common balcony on the 3rd floor / roof deck over the 2nd floor. Approximately 187 square feet in size, facing Eastern Avenue. And that also says, which may be covered but not enclosed.
Okay.
That was 6. 7, any permanent dumpsters on site must be located on the southern side of the property near the building and must be screened. Maintain property clean and clear of all debris. 8, comply with city code and Board of Health regulations regarding site grading and extermination during site development, and obtain food service permits per state food and sanitary codes. 9, maximize site distance by using low landscaping abutting sidewalks, install safety signage and pavement markings for vehicles and pedestrian crossings at Site Drive, including stop sign, pedestrian crossing sign, and caution vehicles exiting sign. 10, provide a site plan that includes an auto turn template to show that all vehicles, including delivery trucks, can turn around to exit the site head on. 11, designate loading space with pavement markings. 12, repair or replace sidewalks, driveways, and perform necessary incidental work adjacent to the property to the satisfaction of the DPW director. 13, obtain DPW approval for proposed new and modified curb cut. 14, install and maintain fencing, gate, landscaping, bicycle rack, and bench adjacent to Northern Strand Community Trail right to the C path, subject to review and approval by Ward City Councilor. Install cameras and lighting in locations abutting property to be determined by Ward City Councilor and Malden Police. Maintain cleanliness of that portion of the Northern Strand Community Trail right to the C path abutting the property, including but not limited to litter control and removal of overgrown vegetation. Now, this does say fencing and gate. It doesn't need to be high chain link fencing or privacy fencing, unless you don't want to mention fencing and gate at all, since I think they may be proposing a low, what do you call those, like the barriers, the wooden Jersey barrier that like abuts to open type fence that abuts the bikes and see. So I don't know if you want to leave that fencing and gate, or you just want to say, in other properties that abut, we normally want them separated. This is a different plan though to have it open to that. Did you want to strike fencing and gate?
No.
Okay, so it'll be up to them what type of fencing and gate.
Right.
It could just be a swinging gate. It might not be a chain gate. 15, I recommend you say no overnight outside storage allowed.
Okay.
So add overnight. 16, install on-site underground stormwater management system, final design subject to review and approval of city engineer. 17, compliance with all requirements of determination of Malden Historical Commission dated October 8th under the Demolition Delay Ordinance, which include the incorporation of the use of historical elements of the existing building and establishment of Volpe Way with monument, in which determination is incorporated here by reference. And then 18, the special permit shall expire on December 31st, 2022, unless construction is commenced pursuant to a building permit. That's a full additional year by ordinance. It would expire 1 year from the date of granting. So would expire next December. This would give them an additional full year to pull the building permit. So it doesn't mean the project has to be completed. Mr. Chair, there's some questions.
Are you finished talking about that?
I'm finished talking about that.
Patrick Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. About that condition, Michelle, I noticed your note 1 on page 2 about the 1 year. What authority do we have to extend it, or do we have to make any specific finding in order to do so?
No, you can extend it. You cannot make it less restrictive. You can extend it, however. You couldn't make it less than 1 year, but you can add on by a condition.
Without making a finding.
No, I mean, I think you're probably, you should articulate if you have any findings, whether it's due to, funding delays or things like that. The demolition permit, I do believe, is considered a type of building permit. It's not a construction permit. But I think once they begin to work actively under it, they should be all set, especially if they're anticipating beginning the demolition process within the year.
And given that they're still securing funding,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's come out during this. If you want to state anything, say anything specific about what you're finding, that would be appropriate too.
that'd be primarily my reason is because while they're still securing financing, it may exceed the initial ordinance designated 12 months.
Okay. The only other thing, and I'll just mention, and I didn't, we've heard about the cardboard compactor. I don't know if you want to leave that open in case they don't end up doing it, or you think due to space constraints and things like that with the site, you might want to require that. Just throwing it out there. They seem like they're going to do it, so.
Yeah, I'd like to see it added because we really need some assurance that it's not going to be in the shape that it's been in lately, and which your pictures from yesterday portray.
Okay, so I think we could possibly we'll just put that in as a separate condition. That would be condition 19, install cardboard compactor on site. Is that what it's called, cardboard compactor?
I think so.
What is it?
A baler,
Cardboard baler.
different ways to do it, but baler is usually.
So I'll say cardboard compactor baler. What is it? B-A-L-E-R? Oh, baler. Okay. I'll say cardboard compactor baler / baler on site, so they'll know exactly. We give them an option to do that, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, that would be 19.
Yeah, I think that's the phrase you used was compactor and baler. Cardboard compactor baler on site.
Okay.
Anyone have any questions for Michelle Eric Henry?
Yes, thanks, Chuck. Eric Henry. Michelle, let's get back up to number 14. We're talking about the fencing and the gates, and with this provision being subject to review and approval by the ward council or city council. I don't know if Council Crowe is still on, or if it's appropriate if I ask her the question directly, she could answer the question directly. What are her thoughts on this gate, and would she be agreeable to discussing what kind of time limit we could put on the passage
of the bike path to Easton Ave.
Do you want,
Council Crow's still on and she's available.
okay, she's unmuted.
I don't know if she's.
We're talking about Volpe Way, Mr. About restricting that passage?
I don't know. Can you
I'm,
explain here? Trying to take.
I'll give it a shot. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Council, good evening. I'm actually talking about this is provision, recommendation number 14 that says it's subject to your approval about fencing and gates. And I'm wondering what time, I think right now, Ms. Gabriella and Mr. Randy said that that's open. I don't know the exact time he said, but it's not open with free access to Easton Ave. And I just wonder what you think, and I know you can't speak on behalf of the commissioner, but the police chief. But if you tell me, you think that could be open to the public 24 hours?
I think that that's a discussion to have sort of with the Bread of Life too, because I do think that, to your point, having that sort of area that's more like a relaxation area in the front there does make sense to be open, because it's not necessarily the parking lot like it is now. But, working with the Bread of Life and, the police chief, I'm open to all suggestions.
If I could add, Mr. Chair, I think we're talking about two different things. Like right now, the gate would open onto private property. And you'd have to traverse private property to get to Eastern Ave. So them locking it and closing it is, they don't have to, but that's their prerogative, and I think it's reasonable.
And that's what 14 is addressing.
14 is addressing, separating the property, right, from bike to the sea. But we now have in this new plan, Volpe Way, which it runs alongside of the building.
Yes.
And that's what I thought your question was. That's going to be subject to a public access easement.
So that's going to be open 24 hours.
I think that that would have to be open. I think they can put up a gate so that nobody can enter their private property unless they want them to enter it
Which is
during
the
whatever
current
hours.
state.
That wouldn't be, I think it's access, at least that's how I understood it. I think the access, there's two different points of access. But the fencing and gate, really, remember, we look at this with all the abutting properties. We want them to take care of the bikes of the sea path that abuts. The fencing and the gate is just so you can have access, like on the CVS, you want someone to be able to come off the trail and go into the businesses there. So I think that's up to the business to determine that. In this case, it will be the Bread of Life and in the residential units. The ward councilor's involvement has to do with, we do for all of these same petitions. The council will be involved. It could have to do with the style, things like that. And hours of operation, as you said. But I think that's also a private matter. I don't think we can make them have access to private property 24 hours,
I would think so.
Right.
We've made private property clean 4 hours every 4 hours.
I'm sorry,
We've made private property clean every 4 hours. So I'm just trying to.
but allowing public access involves liability and things like that, so. I mean, I think access in cleaning are different things, but that's, so.
No, that's fine. I'm not sure if that satisfies what they're concerned. We can't tell them you have to let public people walk across your private property 24 hours a day or 10 hours a day or whatever.
Okay, well, as a council, I understand what you said, sir, and the council said, maybe it is a discussion we should have with Bread of Life. I don't know if this is the proper time, but.
No, I think that my personal opinion is, and see if it satisfies you, is that Councilor Crowe could address that with the Bread of Life and the residential people.
Okay.
And come up with something that would work for both the city and for the petitioners.
And Mr. Henry,
So
I'm
that's right.
very open to hear sort of what your thoughts and to bring that to the Bread of Life and see if there's some, maybe compromise or something that works for everybody. But really, having a conversation with you to sort of see where, what the thought process is and, what you were interested in seeing.
I'm definitely amenable to that, Counselor. Thank you for offering. I would just preface that by saying my basic concern is that I went to volunteer and I could not access it from the parking lot behind Dockside. The gate was locked and it was after 10 or some, it was after the time that I wanted to drop my children off to volunteer. And if this is to be, as you touted, a public access, don't vote be way between the two, it would seem that it should be as the bike path is, just a spur or extension of the bike path. And that is also 24 hours. And with that, I will yield. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? Councilor Crowe, if you're still on, if you could take Member Henry's comments into account as far as how that would impact Volpe Way. I don't think we could do it much with the actual site, other than the hours of operation that they do their service. But with regard to Volpe Way, if you could keep that in mind,
Absolutely.
speaking with them, that would be much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Okay, is there a motion? Diane Schuler.
I'd like to make a motion that we grant with the 19 conditions.
Diane Schuler has made a motion to grant the recommendation of staff as amended this evening with conditions. And second, Ken Antonucci, second. Okay.
Ken Antonucci,
Yes.
Diane Schuler,
Yes.
Patrick Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Tadej Gebrselassie. Yes. Patrick Hayes,
Yes.
Eric Henry.
Yes.
Eric McCush,
Yes.
Henry Susie,
Yes.
Charles Leyland.
Yes. The petition has been granted, the extension for 2 years. Good luck with it. Good luck with the funding.
Good luck.
Thank you so much, all of you. I really appreciate your time and all of those in attendance and the counselors. We're excited to move forward and thank you for your support and for all your thoughtful comments, which we will take into consideration. We tend to be a good neighbor and I think we're going to be a better neighbor with our better facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next item we're going to hear is an advisory recommendation to the city council for a special permit for 11 Dartmouth Street.
Should have a copy, this should be packaged behind the agenda. We have a staff report and recommendation. You also have a copy of portions of the materials that were submitted. You don't have a complete set, but you have most of the relevant documents. So This is an advisory recommendation. If you, it's presented for your consideration, the report and recommendation to be submitted to the special permit granting authority, which is the city council. So the proposal is for a structure more than 6 stories. Specifically, it's a 9-story office building. The subject property consists of 2 separate parcels held in common ownership. One is 11 Dartmouth Street, currently site of a general office building, and the other is 17 Dartmouth Street, which is an off-site parking facility, an open-air parking lot. Petitioner is the owner and developer. The proposal is to demolish the existing building, construct a new building with 9 stories and approximate total gross floor area of 188,076 square feet. The proposal is to use floors 2 through 9 for general offices. So that would be 150,000 square feet in total. And to use the first floor for smaller restaurant and retail uses, tenants to be determined, total of 3,000 square feet. And to use a portion of the first floor and 1 underground level for parking of 160 vehicles using an automated lift system. I've itemized the application. It's a type of parking system. There's some information in here on it. You can see
You envision something like that used to be in Boston.
they're stacked up. So it's a system, like it's not correct, but it's a rack system. So one car is parked in and lowered, another car is parked in and lowered, so it's
Okay.
an automated,
That's what I was-
like, system. So I've itemized the information that was submitted with the petition. This is all incorporated in by reference. I won't read that. The property is located in the central business zoning district. The proposed general offices, restaurant, retail users are allowed by right in this district. I will note that there are other uses allowed by right in the central business zoning district, namely club, lodge, daycare center, hospital, nonprofit, school, religious facilities, business school, funeral home, general offices, recreation for gainful business, restaurants, retail sales less than 5,000 square feet, retail services, convenience stores, supermarkets, artist-led workspaces, and public service corporations. The proposal is to use property in the central business zoning district for allowed uses. So the proposal does not have to conform to dimensional controls. It must have a minimum lot area of 5,000 square feet, 50 feet of frontage, and a maximum height of 55 feet and 12 stories. The proposed building more than 6 stories must comply with the requirements for all structures more than 6 stories, and we'll get to those. In terms of parking requirements, the proposed general offices, restaurant, retail uses require no parking. All allowed non-residential uses in central business zoning district do not have to conform with off-street parking requirements. That being said, the proposal will provide 160 parking spaces on site, again, on 2 levels of automated parking, one on the first floor and one on a level below ground. In terms of traffic impact, the city's peer review reported petitioner's traffic impact and access study and follow-up response are contained in correspondence dated May 5th, 2020, November 5th, 2020. The city peer review is Ken Petralia, Malden, and includes the following recommendations for traffic and safety mitigation. Regarding intersections, to modify signal timings at the intersection of Main Street, Ferry Street, Salem Street. Regarding the intersection of Main and Center Street, to replace the existing doghouse signal head with a 4-section signal head that would include a flashing yellow arrow. Installation of backplates on overhead signals, and modifying signal timings for the AM with all modifications to include updated analysis, design, and installation. Also to install pedestrian tactile warning panels at each crosswalk of the intersection of Main and Florence Street. Other recommendations for traffic and safety mitigation concern sidewalks, specifically to install new sidewalks abutting the project site on both sides of Dartmouth Street from Pleasant Street to Garnet Road. Also regarding crosswalks, to restripe existing crosswalks with thermoplastic ladder pattern at the intersection of Pleasant Street, Dartmouth Street, Middlesex Street, and Garnet Road. And transportation demand management to implement all proposed measures, specifically a transportation coordinator, a tenant orientation packets, bicycle storage, unbundled parking, ride share information, internal ride matching, guaranteed ride home, and transit screen. Those are all types of measures or programs. In terms of water, sewer, and drainage, review by the city engineer of the stormwater management report and drainage and utility plan is necessary to determine whether water, sewer, and drainage systems will be adequate following the project. Demolition delay. This project is subject to the demolition delay and alteration delay ordinance. The Malden Historical Commission reviewed the proposal and made a determination the building is not significant and the demolition is allowed to proceed without delay. You have a copy of the determination. Actually, you don't. I have a copy of the determination dated January 16, 2020, if anyone wants to see it. In terms of conformance with the master plan, the proposal is in conformity with economic development goals of the master plan, specifically recommendations for the downtown to develop modern and flexible office space to encourage the redevelopment of underutilized buildings in areas of the city, especially the downtown. Required findings to grant a special permit for all structures more than 6 stories. So these are the findings that the city council is going to need to make in order to grant a special permit. 1, they must find conformance with the dimensional controls. 2, they must find traffic and circulation shall be adequate following project development. 3, they must find the proposed structure will create no significant new shadow for any properties in residence A and B zoning districts. They also must find that the proposed structure will not be detrimental to the health, welfare, safety, peace, and enjoyment of the nearby residents, will not cause increases in loitering, disturbances, disorderly conduct, or excessive noise, or decrease in air quality, and that the proposed use is in the interest of the public good. They also must find the water, sewer, and drainage systems will be adequate following project development, and that adequate provisions have been made for solid waste removal in the site. I don't know if anybody has any questions about the proposal. You have, as I said, certain parts of the application. You have the site plans, the conceptual plans. You also have a narrative, a project narrative in your package. I have copies of just about everything else if anybody is interested, who wants any more information. Again, this would be you making an advisory recommendation to the city council. They will then hold a public hearing, hear from the petitioner, hear from members of the public, receive their recommendation, and then decide whether to grant a special permit for the project.
Since item number 6, where solar arrays seem to be more and more common, if they wanted to put in a store, give them an option. Reasonable equipment, the accommodation for solar is so desired. Something to that effect.
Okay, we can make an exception for solar. I'll call them solar panels, as that's,
Yeah.
you think, or a solar panel system. That's good. Yeah, we should start doing that. You're right, because that is becoming more popular.
It's common to small and retail uses.
Well, that was provided in their description.
Right, we'll do that.
I believe, let me just get to their narrative. And it's also referenced in some of the traffic impact. So first, it's just probably best to refer you to the plans, which show, well, actually, we'll start with the project narrative. So it states Um, So it says approximately 3,000 ground floor retail space. I believe it also plans.
This is what, 180,000 square feet, 9 floors, what's that, 20,000 square feet of floor.
Right, but this is approximately 3,000 on the first floor. And on the plans, the context plan, they show retail / coffee in one corner, and then they show retail in the other corner. The traffic references, the peer reviewer did actually ask for more info on the type of retail. They stated, he was questioning in terms of the types of vehicles that might be visiting. Their response, so this is the traffic peer reviewer, they questioned for more info on the retail uses. The response for the consultant for the project, which is Howard Stein Hudson. This is contained in the traffic comments, but applies to the project. It reads, the proponent has indicated the retail area will be used for small retail such as grab-and-go food outlets, a cafe, or other neighborhood retail. These two spaces will be approximately 2,000 square foot each and will be non-destination retail. They are primarily intended to be patronized by local pedestrian traffic. The tenants will be ancillary retail and offer multiple services to reduce necessary trips to the site. The small retail spaces have been accounted for in the trip generation and traffic analysis. The tenants of the retail spaces will utilize the loading dock on Dartmouth Court for all deliveries. Deliveries will not take place on Dartmouth Street. So that was some additional information I had. Now, I know that said 2,000 square foot each, but throughout all the other documents, they said 3,000.
Now,
Sure. The 9 stories. I guess that does not include the 2 parking sub-grades.
One of the parking areas is on the ground floor, the first floor. So when you look at the plan, you'll see the retail spaces on the Dartmouth Street side, and then towards the back on that floor plan, you'll see these parking lifts. You seen that on the first floor plan?
Yeah, the 4. So you've got two pages that say ground.
Yeah, that's, I'm not sure why the 2 pages say ground floor plan. Ground floor plan, page 3 is actually the first floor of the building. Ground floor is actually below ground.
with the yellow and peach color.
Yellow and peach is the first floor. Yellow and peach is where you walk into the lobby off Dartmouth Street. You have the retail, the lobby.
Yeah, that's it.
That's at grade, and there are parking areas in the back. There's some at grade parking, but then there's a series of these lifts. Looks like there's 9 of them. So that's at that level, but then you can see when you enter in off the court, you go down those level. Then that's what's actually labeled ground floor is below ground. This is like a basement level. And that's totally gray, and that shows all the lifts. There's a cross section at the back of that conceptual package where you can see the 2
It's on the second page.
levels.
On the second page of this package.
I'm sorry, that actually, yeah, I didn't mention that. That's a package that was presented at a community meeting. So those PowerPoint slides were presented at a community meeting. That's not actually part of their official submission, but I gave that to you for reference because it explained a lot about the project. But it does seem to, and that's, I'm sorry, that's the one that has the cross section.
Sure.
You do have cross sections like this showing the outside of the building,
Yeah, the elevator.
right,
Yeah.
the elevations. Showing the height.
Saying it's 9 stories.
Right.
That first story is 26 feet high. Huh? Right. What's the basement? I've seen this one.
Pat, would you then add the roof area that they've got designed up there? Except the roof.
Yeah, it's like 18 feet up there. Because that's all deck and utilities.
Yeah, it's 13 at that point.
That's just that's basically a roof area, right? A roof deck.
Yeah,
So that's just like an open parapet.
yeah, the roof doesn't get counted as a floor.
Right. So that top one's just like an open. It's like an extension of the facade.
But you'd still call it a 9-story building, even though they're using that 10 stories.
So that's the
10th
ninth,
floor.
that's the ninth level. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's the ninth, isn't it? Counting from this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
On your cross section, I'm confused the one of the PowerPoint. It looks like there's 2 sub levels and then a ground floor level. It's 26 feet high, has a mezzanine. Then there's a series of 13-foot stories. And then yes, that 18-foot is basically looks like a room, but it's surrounded by an extension of the facade of the building.
Yeah, I was looking at this one. This
Yeah.
says south
Yeah.
elevation, north elevation.
This 26-foot, half the floor is parking. Is that right? And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 floors of office. They're labeling it 2 through 9. And then we've got that roof thing that's 18 feet. Well, feels like a lot of floors, and I want to make sure I'm counting it right. I don't want to think it's one thing and then find out, you know, oh, it's really considered 7 floors or whatever the industry standard.
The floors, you know, height, just awfully tall height. Sort of.
I received a message from the building commissioner that says it needs a roof to be considered a story by our definitions.
Okay.
So that top thing is not a story.
It's just sort of
Industrial, that's just sold machinery.
I would put through trees and people.
it's one of those.
Recognition of little,
It looks like elevator. It's probably the elevator.
Looks like stairs and elevators or go up
Yeah,
on that
that's-
side of the building, so maybe that's what it is, the mechanicals, but
View this as being true to form, Michelle. What's this big tower? It goes up above it.
That's,
Well, that's what we said. It's
On the
that's
corner.
probably- You can't,
no, he's talking about other buildings.
oh.
That's on the corner of Florence and Main, Caravel.
Malden Garden? Or is that second floor? Okay.
It's on the corner of Florence and Main.
Or where's the others? It's the other ones that caravan here. They all seem to be depicted as lower than the surrounding.
There is I believe in the slides
Yeah,
for the presentation, it listed all the different properties that were nearby in the different heights.
if you look at the third.
I think it listed them even by address, so.
It identifies and shows the taller building.
That's the Department of Education.
That's the DOE?
Yeah,
That one?
further down.
Yeah, I think
So-
Chuck was pointing to C.
Look at page 11, urban context and height benchmarks.
C.
C is Caravetta, that's on the corner
Yeah.
of Florence and Main. Behind that, so that's
There's
18
the other
stories,
caravan.
right, that's 11 floors. D, which is what's behind 480 Main, is 12 floors. That I think is Malden Garden.
C is 18. That's tall. So the new one that just got built, Chuck,
It's right in front,
is
that's
right in front of
480.
it, not colored, it's not
That's,
highlighted,
that's 6 stories.
that's 6 foot.
I'm sorry, that's not 6 stories, is it? Was that 5 or 6? B is 11 stories, that's 160 Pleasant Street.
That was the caravan.
That was, yeah. That was RIO and all the other ones predate design. Wow.
If you look to the far right on that one, the one that says view from Salem Street, it's hard to see because the picture's kind of small. But that building C, that actually gives you a good aerial. What the elevations are gonna look like, the buildings and everything. It's just tough to see because it's such a small version of the picture. Yeah, but so the new building. Proposed building is substantially higher than the building that was built on Pleasant Street.
So, am I looking at this correctly? Think that brown block coming out of the that's the new one. That just picked up, right?
And that's the top.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Okay, is there anything else you want to take us through, Michelle? Does anyone have questions for Michelle?
No, I will make the recommendation. I would recommend that you recommend the special permit be granted, provided that the city council makes the required findings that we just went through, and subject to the following conditions. 1, to merge the lots, 11 Dartmouth Street, parcel ID 050259918, and 17 Dartmouth Street, parcel ID 050259902, be the approval not required subdivision process. The entire development, including facades, shall be as per plans, which are incorporated herein by reference, and except where modified by these conditions. 3, floors 2 through 9 may only be occupied for general office use. A maximum of 3,000 square feet of the first floor may only be occupied for retail sales, retail services, and or restaurant use, with any one business occupying no more than 2,000 square feet. And any other use and occupancy shall require an amendment to the special permit, traffic impact study, in compliance with the city's own ordinance. I have given you that list of all the other uses that are allowed by right. So this condition is directed, is trying to address that so that the occupancy, the city will have some review over the occupancy of this building in case the offices don't pan out.
And that will prevent it from being flipped into retail, right? The residential.
Residential would require a special permit anyway. This will address all those other uses that are allowed by right. No, residential conversion would require a special permit. Anyway, which is why I say compliance with the city's own ordinance. So this isn't superseding the ordinance for the other requirements, it's in addition to. Which maybe should say in addition to compliance. 4, a minimum of 160 parking spaces shall be provided on site. 5, antennas on the rooftop or any part of the building's exterior prohibited except for emergency antennas. 6, screen rooftop equipment visually and audibly except solar panels. 7, no permanent dumpster will be permitted on site after completion of construction. The permanent building must have a trash compactor. Storage of totes for use with trash compactor permitted, subject to board health approval. 8, install pedestrian alert sensors at garage entrance exit. 9, any outside storage of any kind is prohibited. 10, any outside display of any kind is prohibited. 11, implement the following traffic and safety mitigation on site and in the project area. Intersections, modify the signal timings at intersection of Main Street, Fair Street, Salem Street. At the intersection of Main Street, Center Street, replace the existing doghouse signal with a 4-section signal head that will include flashing yellow arrow. Installation of back plates on overhead signals, modify signal timings for the AM. With all modifications to include updated analysis design installation. Install pedestrian tactile warning panels at each crosswalk at the intersection of Main and Florence Street. Regarding sidewalks, install new sidewalks abutting the project site on both sides of Dartmouth Street and Pleasant Street to Garnet Road. Restrip existing crosswalks with thermoplastic ladder pattern at the intersections of Pleasant Street, Dartmouth Street, Middlesex Street, and Garnet Road. Implement all proposed transportation demand management measures, transportation coordinated, terminal orientation packets, bicycle storage, unbundled parking, rideshare information, internal ride matching, guaranteed ride home, and transit screen. 12, water, sewer, and drainage systems shall be modified at the request of the city engineer. Not sure if he's reviewed them or may want any particular changes, but the other thing that I would just note, the open space is not required for business development or any commercial or industrial, so there are no open space requirements for this project. They are showing a roof deck with open space. If that is something you want to address, you could put that in as a condition. Or you could just add it into the entire development condition 2, including facades and open space on roof deck shall be as per plans. And these are very conceptual plans, so it's up to you. You want to.
Meaning that would require that they actually build the roof deck.
Right, in open space. I would recommend that. So under 2, the entire development, including facades and open space on roof deck shall be as per plans, which are incorporated here by reference and acceptably modified by these conditions.
Okay, any questions for Michelle? Eric Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric Henry. Michelle,
Aye.
this is referring to-
Oh,
You guys hear me?
Council Craig Spatafora is raising his hand and.
Are you?
Eric, go ahead.
Okay, I'm back up. Recommendation number 5 as it relates to antennas and emergency antennas. Have any idea how many emergency antennas we have floating around the city?
I don't, but I do know that telecom antennas, there are a lot of those attached to facades of buildings and on rooftops all over the city.
I also know that it's a pretty lucrative opportunity for a business owner to have access to antennas. So just wondering why is this a right of the tenants or why are we restricting this? Is it a zoning issue or?
We restrict it because it's not regulated under the zoning.
Okay.
So it adds to the look of the buildings, it adds to a lot of aesthetics and features and things like that of the building. So that's a typical condition we would put in.
Thank you.
Okay, is Councilor Spatafora looking to speak?
Council Spatafora?
I do, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I appreciate the dialogue, and I know this is something that's gonna come to the city council for a special permit in terms of the height. I have a couple questions. One is probably for Michelle. Is this gonna come, if it is approved, is this come underneath site plan review?
No.
It doesn't? Okay. Can we
No,
make,
this is just by special permit.
can we make that a condition if the council approves it?
What, that it requires site plan review?
Yeah, or some type of verbiage to do that in terms of the aesthetics of the building, et cetera.
But you could, I don't know if you can actually tie it into the site plan review that's written into the ordinance, because it's not required, but you could fashion a condition that says site plan review, and then you'd have to identify, who would be doing that and what they would be doing it in accordance with, what standards. I guess you could reference the ordinance and those standards. There's a site plan review committee that's for the RIO, the residential incentive overlays. There's also a row quarry site plan review committee. So you would want to specify or identify who you would want to have review. You can't really defer your authority in terms of decision-making on anything substantive to anyone else, so you'd have to just be careful with that, however the condition would be.
Yeah, and if I could add some context, Michelle, and the reason why I say that is first of all, I would say, from my opinion, I'm not necessarily against the development. I think it's great to have a non-residential building come into the square for the tax purposes and all the job opportunity. I do have some concerns about the height, particularly in that particular street. It's such a small, tight street. So I don't debate the height here. It's good to hear that I heard 26 feet for the first floor, et cetera. What I do have a little bit of a concern for, and I've talked to the petitioner about this, is I find it very hard to believe that in this COVID world, that we have the Bank of America building that has been looking for tenants, both in terms of research development, in terms of any type of use of office space, and they cannot find tenants for that building. Now, I understand the floor plates are much larger, but my question is always, if they build it as an office space and it doesn't work, can they come back to the city council to change it to residential? And if so, is there any way we can prevent that from happening? Because I will be honest with you, I think the reason why they're putting in those number of spaces is not because they want to spend $3 or $4 million. I think it's a backup plan. And I personally think if you've seen the original drawings versus this drawing, it's not as aesthetically pleasing. I understand it's a cost factor because they're not getting the other additional stories which they wanted. But it's probably pretty easy to turn this building into condos or some type of residential component as a plan B. So my question is, any recommendation comes from this board, I am more inclined to support this if it is truly going to stay an office space and not change to residential. And the second part is originally, I think aesthetics are important, right? If we are going to build it as an office building, whether it be 8, 9 stories. I know other cities have mandated that the look, the feel, the colors. I think we need to do that. And I know it's the council's vote, but any way we can, any recommendation from this board in terms of expertise in planning, any conditions that we want to put on that, whether it be a slight plan review or any modifications, I would like that, at least from my perspective, to be maybe added. Because I think we're at that point in the city where we should have the clout and we should have to say what things look like. And I'll yield. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor.
Okay, Councilor Murphy is raising her hand to speak. I will just let you know, this is a, you're discussing set a public meeting, so you're not required to hear any public comment, and you're not opening it up for hearing, but it is certainly your prerogative if you want to hear from any of the councilors or anybody that wants to speak.
Councilor Murphy will be the last external person we'll hear from.
Okay. Councilor Murphy, you should be unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I would just like to, just thank the board for hearing me this evening. And certainly I'm following Councilor Spatafora, and I won't take much of your time. But I wanted you to know that I do support everything that he said. I do think that it is a concern, as we at the council have talked about this particular piece of property, of what the future of it is. And the issues that he's brought up tonight and the concerns he's brought up tonight are something that we are all thinking about. And I would hope that you, as you deliberate, would take his comments into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor.
So in reference to that, again, residential use would require a special permit. That being said, I mean, you certainly can add in, I would say, to condition 3, any residential use is prohibited. Then they have to come back to amend. There's no question. That doesn't, prevent what we, was just being discussed, that the building is built and they can't find tenants, then the building's already built, so then how is the building going to be occupied? My idea with condition 3, trying to define what uses could go in there, does come from another project in the city where, again, it was proposed as offices, and there's a proposal that the supermarket's going to go in there, but the supermarket's allowed by right. So, it's not saying that we might not want a supermarket, or you might not want a convenience store or some of these other uses, but at least you will have the chance to review it.
Right,
so it's not an outright prohibition. It's a prohibition, initially it's a restriction. So it will require the petitioner to come back to present the new plan.
I think that's a good safety latch to have, especially. I'm just really struggling with a 9 or however you count it, 9 or 10-story building plunked down in the middle of the square. I mean, I know we've got some residential buildings that are high, but I don't like those either. And in full transparency, when I first came on the board in the mid-'80s, I voted for all those Caravana buildings. And I get reminded every time I drive down the square and see them that I voted for those.
Well, but in my point with that roof deck, the roof deck's one thing, but then you've got 18 feet of structure above the roof deck, which really makes the building appear that much taller. That's this is when you do see in relation to the rest of the building, and yes, we do have plenty of tall buildings and taller buildings adjacent to it.
That one you showed was very, really striking.
I think it provides as a roof deck, provides a sort of sense that, you're protected around.
Oh, no,
By extending that facade up that really gives you a sense of.
Oh, no, definitely, yeah. I mean, if that facade wasn't there, I wouldn't be on roof deck. I'd be terrified.
If this were 6 feet, everything about it was the same, except that it was 6 feet, 6 stories, I'd be a lot more agreeable to it than just the 9. I think just that page that it has it where it shows it just popping up from all those new apartments that were built along Main Street. I forget what it was called. It's around 442. What's it called? Old Rudiments. The old, not Rudiments, the old bowling alley and stuff.
Yeah. with the
Maybe
old-
like Alston or something.
488, that's 488.
I don't know what.
Yeah.
No,
that's the
Rudiments was
488,
another.
It was another furniture store.
I mean, here's the thing, and I'll just mention this, and I've had this discussion before. Stories, you could have 20-foot stories.
Yeah.
There's a minimum of a story, but I don't know if there's a maximum, so even if it's 6 stories and they're 20
Feet high.
feet high, you're still gonna have,
Yeah. And that's,
it's regulated that way.
and that's just, it seems kind of a little misleading. It's saying it was decreased the height by 25%. We didn't actually decrease the height by 25%. It decreased the number. of
You're talking
stories.
about the proposal, the
Number of
proposal,
stories,
you know, which isn't before you, was a different number of stories. The original was never filed, it was discussed. This is what was actually filed. In terms of what the council asked about the site plan review, I'm not really sure if you could, you know, put in a condition that another entity do, you know, part of the decision-making on the project, so you'd have to be careful. Site plan review typically would have to do with landscaping and facades and things like that. I don't know how that would go, if that could actually be a condition, that site plan review would be required. I'm not sure about that.
So you're not prepared to add it to your recommendation.
But the site plan comment on, you know, the facade and massing and all that, are they just looking at the site issues? Council Spatafor seems to be more concerned about, you know, just the overall massing and look, and, you know, it's really the exterior appearance of the roof. It seemed to me that was one of his bigger concerns.
And I'm just not sure when they cross the line between deferring authority to somebody else. They're approving a plan for a building, but yet another committee is going to determine things like massing and facade and, you know, I think I'm not sure that's doable. I think they certainly could say they would want, you know, the city engineer to review the drainage and landscaping or something, you know, something that's they've already agreed there's going to be landscaping and drainage. That's, you know, who's going to actually have a final say? It's like saying the ward councilor will. But I don't know if when you get into facade and massing, to me, has to do with like scale and size. I don't know if that kind of is a more substantive issue that they could defer to somebody else, whether that's a site plan review committee or another board or another entity. I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that.
They didn't have a site plan for this facility, did they? So you didn't have a site plan review. for
Oh,
that.
there was a whole building committee for this.
It was?
Yeah,
Okay.
that city officials sat on.
There wasn't site plan review.
No, site plan review is, you know, in the zoning, so it could be something that's kind of light that addresses some of these things, but it's not in the zoning.
And that's certainly something that the council can enact
I think the
when they
council,
take it on.
when they take it up, they could, you know,
Yes.
recommend a condition. You could also, you know, you could try to recommend a condition or just make it as a general recommendation. I'm just not sure. I'm thinking in terms of this ordinance. And I'm not 100% sure. I'm just asking, Nelson Miller is just giving some comments. Emergency antennas are used by the fire department to connect the alarm system to the central station. They're called bidirectional amplifiers. That was apparently antenna on it. And site plan review would require an ordinance change. So if it's site plan review, which is what I'm thinking along the lines of this, if they want to, designate a committee, comprised of the ward counselor, a neighborhood representative, and whoever, to look at landscaping, I think they can do that.
That would be up to city council.
That would be up to the city council. So I'm just saying, I don't know if you want to try to do something. I'm not really sure. You can't just kick it over to site plan review in the ordinance. That I agree with that. So if there's something specific you want to address, look, if you're concerned about the facade or something, you could say, as a condition that you think, somebody should be looking at that. I don't know if anybody has concerns.
But it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a community meeting presentation.
Right.
I wouldn't imagine this is what their real plans are going to look like.
Well, part of it's the community meeting, but you do have copies of the real plans that were filed. The PowerPoint was the community presentation. These Gensler were, we should have copies of these. And then this, which is application, this is the official filing. This is what they filed with the building permit.
I have that. I didn't have the plan.
You don't have these plans? They might be in smaller size. They might be smaller
Just
size.
one,
Yeah.
one that covers it. There's
Yeah, those are those plans. You have those.
No, I'm saying I just
You
have
have
sheet one.
You've gone context
That's the
plan,
concept plan. Is that the plan that you've got there?
those plans, and then you don't have these plans as well?
No.
Okay, well, they did file plans. The context plans will file with the building permit application too. This is just showing the footprint. I mean, this is a drainage and utility plan. It shows the underground chambers. It shows the details. I'm sorry, I thought you did have that. I think you were supposed to have that.
Complex plan goes up to page 9, which is a sheet 1.
Okay, so, sorry, you're supposed to get those too, so. They have actually, filed for a building permit with, which was processed by the building commissioner because it needs, this type of structure needs a special permit, so.
So by right, they could be 6 stories, and they're looking to do 9.
Well,
Overseas.
no, let's see, hold on. By right, offices. Is general offices 50 feet, 4 stories, but then central business. Right, they can go up to 6 without needing a special permit, correct?
Is there a height limitation on that as well, or is it just 6 stories?
Well, it says 6 stories and 55 feet,
Yeah, because this is,
which,
I mean, for practical purposes, no one's gonna have a 20-foot.
not a 6 story.
Every floor being 20 feet high, it just costs too much to heat it.
Not a 6 story.
Air conditioning.
you don't have to make you can make whatever recommendation you want if you this is making a recommendation, and I would add, actually, I was thinking a separate condition that just says any residential use is prohibited. If you don't think they're gonna make the findings, or regardless of that, if you think that there is an impact, you can, recommend against it. They
Do you have any questions for Michelle on this?
Michelle, you said it was the current zoning, current is 6 stories or how many feet?
55,
55 feet?
so it's at 9.
Because this building here is. Let me double check on that before I embarrass myself. It's 148 feet. Above grade.
Six,
So it's tri-
all structures, 6 stories, but no more than 12. I don't know where I got the 55. I get the 55.
55.
I think it used to be 55 and maybe we deleted that because it didn't make any sense.
But it feels like even though it's commercial, this is the kind of project the city's trying to get away from. With all the towers that got built. And yes, I know it's not residential, but it still seems like it's bigger than what we wanted in Malden.
Yeah, I mean, if you think that, it will, the structure will be detrimental to the health, welfare, safety, peace, enjoyment of the nearby residents, it will cause increases in loitering, disturbances, disorderly conduct, excessive noise, increase in air quality, or that the proposed use is not in the interest of the public good. I mean, you could make a recommendation against the project based on any of those. Conformance with dimensional controls, it does conform, so I wouldn't recommend you say it doesn't, but use that as the basis for a recommendation. Traffic in circulation shall be adequate following project development. There are some issues, but it's been fully vetted, I would have to say. The level of service changes and it does degrade, but it's addressed with some of the mitigation. And that's the other thing I was going to note. The petitioner did offer a payment in lieu of the installation of the implementation, but we would not recommend that. We haven't done that in years. We want the implementation done. We don't want the money in lieu of implementation. So that's why it looks like there is no impact to residents in the zoning district. So I wouldn't recommend you base your recommendation on that. Water, sewer, and drainage, I think we need to still find out about that from the city engineer. So I wouldn't base it on that. So I believe this standard 4, detriment to health, welfare, safety, peace, enjoyment of nearby residents, and, et cetera, and then whether the proposed use is in the interest of the public good. That I think is where, is the broad discretion. For the council, if it doesn't make that finding, and I would say you could use similar concerns, if you will, if you were going to make a recommendation against the project.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? And if not, is there a motion?
You want to, the other option, if you want to take it under further advisement, think about it. If you want any more information, you could table they're not scheduled. I don't even think they've scheduled to do the hearing yet. It'll be sometime in January, so you will have the opportunity if you wanted to revisit it in January. So if you don't make the recommendation tonight, you still do have a window, I would say, because we're meeting on the 9th, I believe, 13th. Which should be before they convene for the hearing. So that's the other option.
So I guess we have 3 options. One is to delay it and take it up again in January.
And if you want more
2 is to
information, let me
approve
know,
it.
right?
And 3 would be to deny.
Right, well, to make a recommendation to approve or to make a recommendation to
Right.
deny. Right,
So those are the 3. Is there anything missing?
no, I don't think so. Or you could not make any recommendation at all, that's the 4.
Okay, it's a 4. So, Patrick.
If we were to make a recommendation to deny, we have to articulate why.
I would think it's an advisory recommendation. You don't have to, but I would recommend that you do. And that's why I was directing you to those different criteria. You can use those or you can state any reason that you want. And that's what I would put in the recommendation. It's a little less you know, the standard about conformance with the master plan is the other thing. If it was not in conformance with the master plan, that would be another standard that you could use. It does meet some of the economic development goals, which is why I highlighted those for you. Doesn't mean it's in conformance 100% with the plan, but it is in conformance with a couple of particular goals.
No, I think you've done a
Yeah.
nice job on the write-up. Just for me, it's too big.
Okay.
It's too high, and that's what it's all about. Like I said, if it were 6 stories, I'd be more inclined to go for it. 4 stories, even better. So if someone wants to
Even
make,
if we made the motion to recommend that they deny it, they can still go ahead and approve it.
Yes, this is just an advisory recommendation. I would say chances are they will take your recommendation and then they will look at the report recommendation and probably if they're inclined to grant it, you know, look at the conditions that would have been recommended. They may ask me, you know, for other conditions. That would be the other option,
okay,
you know.
so does someone want to make a motion? Eric Henry.
Point of information, Chair, yes, Eric Henry. It's regarding peer review. Can you mentioned that, I think somewhere in this conversation about, is it the council that triggers the peer review, or is it something that if it wouldn't be, but because this for us to put it as a condition, or maybe even a condition of, to refuse it, for lack of, or for want of peer review?
It was peer reviewed. The traffic impact was peer reviewed.
Okay.
By the city peer reviewer. It was recommended that council has to make a finding that traffic is adequate. Let me just find it here. I can tell you exactly what it says. One of the findings is that the city council must find that traffic and circulation shall be adequate following project development. The applicant shall supply traffic study of the existing traffic on surrounding streets as well as the projected loads resulting from the construction of the proposed building. Such study shall be performed by a qualified traffic engineer in accordance with criteria established by the Transportation Research Board, shall include AM hourly peaks. For purposes of the special permit, adequate shall mean level of service D or better. The peer review is an option. It's not required, but it was strongly recommended, and the petitioner agreed to have the matter peer reviewed in advance of the public hearing, as opposed to getting to the public hearing. And it would definitely have been something I recommended if they had not done a traffic study or it hadn't been peer reviewed.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other one have any comments or want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Eric McCush.
Eric McCushy, I'd like to make the recommendation that the planning board recommends to the city council to deny the special permit based on the size of the project. It's not being just a public.
Okay, recommendation to deny is the size of the project, not in the interest of public good. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Okay,
Eric's made a motion to make a recommendation to deny. Is Kenny? Kenny seconds it?
so a yes vote is to recommend to deny. Ken Antonucci,
Yes.
Diane Chuha. Yes. Patrick Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Tawadich Gabrielson here, Patrick Hayes,
Yes.
Eric Henry,
Yes.
Eric McCush,
Yes.
Henry Susie,
Yes.
Charles Leoben.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, so
we'll make that recommendation.
okay. Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, Kenny, can you give us a community preservation committee update?
Just continue to update all the CPA documents. Last night, we're working on the plan.
Very good. Michelle, the Broadway corridor study, I know there's something.
Yes, Broadway corridor study, the update is the plan is done. It was presented to the city council last night. And you have a copy of the executive summary. It should be attached to your agenda. It's a color, color photo, so you can take that. If you would like, I believe the full study is going to be posted on the city website if it already hasn't been. There was a presentation they did. I don't know if that's also posted on the website. So that is the update. The plan is done.
Terrific, thank you. And what about inclusionary zoning advisory?
Inclusionary zoning advisory committee. The committee, we're still working on the feasibility, financial feasibility study. The consultant is still working on it. I think that's going to be done at some time soon. And I believe that's the update.
Very good, thank you. And the mayor's working group.
Yes, we're still working on the Malden River site plan review zoning amendment is nearing ready to be filed. So I think we'll be seeing that come sometime soon. There's also, we're working on the commercial incentive piece still. It's still, everything is still in the works, so.
Okay, thank you. Next regularly scheduled meeting is set for January 13th, 2021. I can't believe we're at there already, but that's where we're supposed to meet next. Again, we'll likely be here. And on that note, I would like to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, or Happy Hanukkah, or Happy Kwanzaa, or I think the holidays over. Enjoy the holidays. Hope everyone's safe and happy and enjoy.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Made the motion.
Diane Shuhar. And,
Who made the motion?
I made it, thanks.
okay, yeah, okay.
And then, okay, I heard Eric too. Okay, so Ken and Diane, because I have not been writing this down and apparently we've never adjourned. No. That's a key piece. Thank you.
Diane, you can write it.
Thank you all very much.